A long stretch of highway, a quiet rest stop, and a moment that could change everything. Imagine this. A young black girl and her white father step out of their car, seemingly just another family stretching their legs during a road trip. But something feels off. Her eyes dart around nervously, her body language stiff, like she's trying to send a message. Most people wouldn't notice, but a Marine on leave, trained to spot the tiniest details, does. He's grabbing a coffee when his instincts kick in. There's something about the girl's hands, a subtle movement that others might miss, a signal of distress and SOS. His mind races. Is this a misunderstanding, or is something much darker unfolding right in front of him? He can't ignore it. Years of service taught him that waiting too long can mean losing the chance to act. He glances toward the man with her. The father. Or is there more to this picture? The Marine's heart pounds as he decides to follow them, careful not to make it obvious. He watches closely, wondering if he's reading too much into a fleeting gesture, or if his gut is leading him to uncover a dangerous truth. What happens next will leave you questioning how many stories like this go unnoticed every day. Could this Marine's quick thinking make all the difference? Keep watching to find out how this encounter unfolds. The Marine stays calm, blending in with a handful of other travelers at the rest stop. He moves closer, pretending to browse a vending machine while keeping the pair in his peripheral vision. The girl seems young, maybe 12 or 13, and her tense posture contrasts sharply with the man's relaxed demeanor. He's chatting on his phone, pacing slightly, as if he doesn't have a care in the world. But the girl, her hands tremble as she adjusts her backpack, and her eyes keep scanning the rest stop like she's waiting for something or someone. The Marine racks his brain. Could he really have seen an SOS? Maybe she was just fidgeting, or maybe his training is making him overanalyze. But he knows better than to dismiss a gut feeling. Something about her silent plea feels deliberate, calculated, like she's hoping someone will notice, but terrified that someone else might catch on. He takes a chance and walks closer, pretending to stretch near their car. That's when he notices a detail that makes his chest tighten. The license plate is partially covered with dirt, smudged enough to obscure the state. That's unusual, and it only deepens his suspicion. Just then, the man hangs up his call and gestures for the girl to get in the car. She hesitates for a moment, glancing toward the Marine. Their eyes meet for a split second, and he knows he has to make a decision fast. Is he about to risk stepping into a situation that might not be what it seems, or will he regret doing nothing if he's right? The man opens the car door and motions for the girl to get in. She takes one slow step forward, her shoulders slumping as if she's giving up. The Marine watches, every instinct screaming that something isn't right. He considers calling the police, but what would he even say? A gut feeling? A possible SOS. That won't hold up if he's wrong. He decides he can't stand by, not yet. As the girl climbs into the passenger seat, the Marine makes his move. He approaches the man casually, offering a friendly smile. "Hey buddy, my truck's acting up. Any chance you've got jumper cables?" The man hesitates, caught off guard. For a moment, his calm demeanor falters, and he looks at the girl before turning back to the Marine. No sorry, we're in a hurry." The Marine nods, pretending to back off, but he lingers just enough to get another look at the girl. Her eyes meet his again, and this time she does something subtle. She taps her fingers against the window in a distinct rhythm. It's the same gesture she made earlier, and now he's sure it's intentional. He recognizes the pattern as another distress signal, one taught in survival training. Meanwhile, the man grows more agitated. He climbs into the driver's seat and starts the engine, but before he can pull away, another car parks nearby. A family gets out, their kids running toward the restrooms, and the sudden presence of more people makes the man pause. The Marine uses the distraction to take out his phone, snapping a quick photo of the car and its partially hidden plates. Is he running out of time, or is the delay just enough to give him the edge he needs? The clock is ticking, and he knows he has to act decisively. The Marine quickly types out a message to local authorities, detailing what he's observed: the girl's signals, the obscured license plate, and the man's suspicious behavior. But just as he hits send, the sound of the car engine revving grabs his attention. The man is making his move. The car inches forward, heading toward the exit of the rest stop. The Marine's mind races. He knows that if they leave now, they could vanish without a trace. His heart pounds as he weighs his options. Should he step in directly, risking confrontation without backup, or follow them to keep eyes on the situation? Time is slipping away, and the girl's earlier signals replay in his head, fueling his determination. Before he can act, something unexpected happens. The girl suddenly presses her hand against the passenger window, her palm flat, fingers splayed wide, a gesture that seems deliberate. Her eyes lock on his, silently pleading. The Marine can't ignore it anymore. He throws caution aside and strides toward the car, waving his arms to signal for them to stop. The man slams on the brakes, his face twisting with a mix of confusion and anger. The Marine approaches, his voice steady but firm. "Hey, I think we need to talk." The air around them feels electric, crackling with suspense as the moment teeters on the edge of confrontation. The man rolls down his window just enough to look at the Marine, his expression tense. "What's your problem?" he snaps, his voice sharp but wavering. The Marine stays calm, keeping his tone casual but firm. "I noticed your plate's a little covered up. Thought you might want to know before you get pulled over," he says, trying to keep the interaction non-threatening while still stalling for time. The man's eyes narrow, clearly suspicious, but before he can respond, the girl suddenly speaks up. Her voice is small but steady, cutting through the tension. "I need to use the restroom," she says, her words almost robotic, like she's rehearsed them. The Marine notices the way her hands grip the seatbelt tightly, her knuckles white. It's a request that seems simple, but her eyes tell a different story, a silent plea for help. The man hesitates, glancing between her and the Marine. He looks ready to argue, but then seems to think better of it. "Fine," he mutters, unlocking the door. "But hurry up." The girl steps out of the car, and for the first time, the Marine notices faint bruises on her wrists, partially hidden under the sleeves of her hoodie. His chest tightens, but he forces himself to stay outwardly composed. As the girl heads toward the restroom, the Marine subtly follows, keeping a safe distance. Once inside, he waits near the door, unsure of what she'll do. Moments later, she emerges, her face pale but determined. Her voice is barely above a whisper as she walks past him. "Please," he says, her lips barely moving. "Don't let him take me." The words hit him like a punch to the gut, confirming his worst fears. Before he can respond, he notices the man stepping out of the car, scanning the area like he knows something's up. The Marine knows he's running out of time, and the stakes have just skyrocketed. The man strides toward the restroom, his face tight with frustration. The Marine steps forward, placing himself between the man and the girl. "Is there a problem here?" The Marine asks, his voice calm but firm, his stance unyielding. The man glares at him, clearly irritated. "She's my daughter. We're running late, and you're wasting our time," he snaps, his tone growing defensive. The girl, standing just behind the Marine, seems frozen, her wide eyes darting between the two men. The Marine glances back at her, his voice softening. "Are you okay?" he asks. She hesitates for a heartbeat before shaking her head ever so slightly, her lips trembling as she struggles to hold back tears. That's all the confirmation he needs. Before the man can react, the Marine pulls out his phone, showing the photo he'd taken of the car. "Already sent this to the local authorities," he says. "If you've got nothing to hide, you won't mind waiting for them to show up." The man's face darkens, and for a split second, it looks like he might lunge forward. But then he stops, his eyes darting toward the road, calculating his next move. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierces the air. A patrol car pulls into the rest stop, lights flashing. The man stiffens, panic flashing across his face. He backs away, his hands raised defensively. But as the officers approach, the girl clutches the Marine's arm, her voice trembling. "He's not my dad," she whispers. The officers act quickly, separating the man from the girl and questioning him. As the truth begins to unravel, a history of abductions linked to the suspect, the Marine feels a wave of relief and anger. But just as things seem to settle, the girl tugs on his sleeve again. "There's someone else," she says quietly, her voice urgent. "Another girl. He said she's in the trunk." The officers, now on high alert, move to the car and pop the trunk. Inside, they find another young girl, frightened but alive. The Marine steps back, his heart pounding as the full weight of the situation sinks in. His instincts had been right, but the outcome is far bigger than he could have imagined. As the man is taken into custody and the girls are escorted to safety, the Marine watches, knowing he'll never forget this day. He acted on a hunch, but that decision saved not one life, but two. The quiet rest stop fades into the background as he reflects on the power of paying attention and the courage of a single, silent plea for help. As the dust settled and the police wrapped up their investigation, the Marine stayed close by, offering the girls a sense of comfort and safety in the chaos. The younger girl, the one from the trunk, was still shaking, clinging to the officers who reassured her she was finally safe. The first girl, the one who had sent the SOS signals, glanced up at the Marine with a quiet gratitude that said more than words ever could. The officers confirmed the man had been under suspicion for months, but they hadn't had enough evidence to bring him in. The Marine's quick actions and sharp instincts had been the turning point. If he hadn't noticed those small signs, the girl's gestures, her body language, this story might have ended very differently. Before leaving, one of the officers approached the Marine, shaking his hand firmly. "You saved their lives today," he said. The Marine nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied, though he knew many might not have looked closely enough to notice. As the two girls were driven away to begin their road to healing, the Marine stood for a moment at the rest stop, reflecting on everything that had unfolded. A simple coffee break had turned into something life-changing, and it was all because he trusted his gut and took action. Driving away, he couldn't help but think about how many cries for help go unnoticed in a world full of distractions. But today, he made sure someone was heard, and that made all the difference.